Pandemic is a cooperative game where players take the role of scientists trying to stop the spread of 4 deadly diseases across the globe. In Pandemic, the goal is to research the cure for these 4 different diseases, represented by these 4 different colors. Players will take turns, and on their turns, players get to do up to 4 different actions. The most important action in the game is the action that allows you to discover a cure for a disease. In this game, players will have a hand of cards. Most of the cards in the game will look like this. They will be a color that corresponds with one of the 4 different colors of diseases, as well as have the name of a city that is depicted somewhere on the board. If a player has 5 cards in their hand that are all the same color, they can use those cards to discover a cure for that color of disease. They must simply have their player pawn be in a space on the board with a research station. That's this little thing right here. And they can spend one of their actions and discard those 5 cards in order to research a cure for that disease, flipping this token over. Once the players have combined and researched all 4 cures, then they immediately win the game. However, there are many ways that the players can lose the game before that happens. Pandemic is a card-driven game, and at the end of each player's turn, that player is going to draw 2 cards from this deck. If a player ever needs to draw a card, but there are not enough cards left in the deck for that player to do so, then the players lose the game. The game is going to instruct the players to place these colored cubes onto the board. These cubes represent people who have contracted one of the 4 different diseases that the players are fighting. If the game ever instructs players to place cubes onto the board, but there are not enough cubes of that color left in the supply for them to do so, then the players lose the game. That disease is now out of control. Lastly, if the game instructs the players to place a disease cube onto a city that already has 3 cubes of that color, this will cause an outbreak. Instead of placing a 4th cube on that space, the players will have to put a cube of that color onto each of the spaces connected to that space via these lines. Whenever this happens, the outbreak tracker will go up by 1 step. If there are 8 or more outbreaks over the course of the game, then the players lose the game. Now, there are other actions that players can do on their turn. They have their choice of up to 4 actions, and many of the actions are going to help the players to find the 5 cards that they need in order to research a cure, as well as get to the place they need to get to. One of the actions is the Treat Disease action. With this action, if a player's pawn is on a space that has 1 or more disease cubes, that player can spend 1 action to remove 1 cube. Players can also share knowledge in this game, which allows them to pass cards from one player to another. If a player's pawn is in a city, and another player's pawn is in the same city, then the player whose turn it is may use an action to either give that card to the other player in that city, or take that card from the other player in that city. Notably, they can only trade the card that matches the name of the city that they are both in. Players may also build extra research stations on the board so that they don't have to walk all the way back to Atlanta every time they want to research a cure. To build a research station, a player must simply discard the card that matches the name of the city that they are currently in. So for example, if I was the white player and my pawn was in Santiago, I could discard the Santiago card in order to build a research station there. Players can put up to 6 research stations in different locations on the board. If they want to build another one, they'll simply move one from one of the old locations to the new location. Now, the other actions in the game will allow players to navigate their pawn around the board in different ways. You can spend an action to drive or ferry your pawn from one city to another, simply following one of the lines connecting from the city you were in to the new city where you are. You can also take a direct flight. By discarding a card from your hand, you can fly directly to the city named on the card. Alternatively, if you are in a city and you have the card that matches the name of that city, you can discard that card to fly to any other city in the world that you like. Finally, if you are at a city with a research station, you can move directly from that city to any other city on the board that also has a research station. So, on a player's turn, that player will do 4 of those actions in any combination. Players are allowed to take the same action multiple times if they like, and they don't have to take 4 actions if they don't want to, although generally they will want to. After they have performed those 4 actions, that player will draw 2 cards from the deck. Most of the cards in this deck, as we discussed, are these city cards. There's exactly 1 city card in the game for every city on the board. Some of these cards are event cards. Event cards are special cards. They can be played at any time, even on another player's turn, and they will do a thing, which is described in text on that card. Each event card is a little bit different. After drawing those 2 cards, if that player has more than 7 cards in their hand, they must immediately discard down to 7 cards, or play event cards until they only have 7 cards left in their hand. This also applies to the share knowledge action. If I give another player a card, and that would put them over 7 cards, they must immediately discard back down to 7. Lastly, that player will infect cities. The way that Pandemic feels is that one player will take a turn, and then the game will take a turn, placing more disease cubes on the board. And then the next player will take a turn, and then the game will take a turn, and so on and so forth. In the Infect Cities step, the player whose turn it is will draw a number of cards from the top of the infection deck. That number is based on where this token currently sits. Right now it's at 2. So I will draw 2 of these cards one at a time, and I will place 1 disease cube of the corresponding color on each of those cities. So 1 yellow cube in Sao Paulo, and 1 blue cube in Chicago, based on the cards that I just drew. As you play the game is going to make itself a little bit harder for the players, because mixed into the player deck are going to be some number of epidemic cards, depending on how difficult you would like the game to be. When a player draws an epidemic card, it does not get added to their hand. They will put it off to the side, and they will follow the 3 instructions listed on that card. All epidemic cards have the same 3 instructions. First, they will move the infection rate marker forward 1 space. Eventually, this will increase the number of cards each player has to draw at the end of each of their turns to place disease cubes on the board. Next, that player will infect a new city by drawing the bottom card of the infection deck and placing 3 disease cubes of the corresponding color on that city. And then finally, that player will take all of the infection cards in the infection discard pile, including the one that they just drew, shuffle those up, and then place them back on top of the infection deck, meaning in that future turns, the cities that get infected will be the cities that already have disease cubes in them, which is very bad because this can lead to outbreaks.